Hi, and welcome to another episode of Lord of the Rings. So on this one, I wanted to take a couple of things that I don't think are going to take up a whole lot of time, so I thought I'd just kind of put them into the same video. So there are just like little bits of things I find interesting. One of the things that I've done over the years is for other Lord of the Rings fans, I'll ask them, if you could be in Middle-earth for 5 seconds, all right, you're not getting to join the armies or help defeat Morgoth or Sauron or do whatever, build Numenor. But if you could just go for 5 seconds and see one thing, what would it be? For me, I would love to just stand at the top of Cairn Amroth in Lothlorien and just take a look around. This would have to be before Arwen dies, I guess, because after Arwen dies, we're told that after that Eleanor and Nifredil bloom no more east of the sea. And I would like to see the Eleanor and the Nifredil. My brother wants to peek into Moria and see it just for a few seconds. I know someone told me they'd like to stand on top of Orthanc and look out over the Gap of Rohan. So, there are some places that just sound so beautiful, or just seem so cool, that it'd be great to just see them if you could. And I think one of the things that Peter Jackson did pretty well in the trilogy he did was to give us these landscapes and things, helped by New Zealand, that are just gorgeous, and we can kind of just see how beautiful the world is. And we never get to go to Cairn Amroth, but we do see Moria, we do see Orthanc, we do see things like Minas Tirith, this beautiful city, this white city that just sort of carved out of the mountainside. So, if you ever thought about that, then put in the comments the place you would just like to see for a few seconds. If you could, just go there. All right, so another thing that I find interesting is when Aragorn sees his mother for the last time. She comes up with this little poem, right? I gave hope to the Dunedain. I have kept none for myself. And since Aragorn's birth name is Estelle, that means hope. So when she says, I gave hope to the Dunedain, it's a pun, right? She gives them hope, but she also gave them her son. So what I didn't know, though, was that these little 2-word poems that characters come up with do happen in the Norse sagas. And they're almost always spoken by a female character who's being abandoned by a male character, brother, father, son, whatever. And as the male character is taking leave, the female character is so distressed, she will blurt out something, and that's why scholars call these blurts. She will just blurt out a 2-line poem about this being abandoned. So it's kind of cool to me that Tolkien took that tradition in the Norse sagas and just stuck it in here. You just have this little blurt from Gilraen. So that's one of the things I think is kind of cool. One of the other things is a line I find maybe the most sad in the whole book. This is a huge book, of course. There's lots of cool things and lots of sad things. But there's this line that Celeborn says the last time he sees Aragorn. And we don't know a lot about Celeborn. His wife, Galadriel, tells us he's like the wisest of the wise. Everyone comes to hear, what Celeborn has to say because he's so wise. And, we never actually get to see him be that wise because he gets 2 or 3 lines and he's in, maybe 2 scenes or something. So we don't really get what attracted to Galadriel to him. We don't really get this great wisdom he's supposed to have. All we really get, is when he and Aragorn are parting ways at the end of Return of the King. He says, he wishes Aragorn well, and he says, may your doom be other than mine, and your treasure stay with you to the end. And you're like, okay, that seems kind of sad. I don't know what that means when you're first just reading through the book, But if you look at the appendices, then you can see what's going to happen. Now, in the movie, Peter Jackson changed it when a ship goes off with Frodo and Bilbo on it, and Gandalf's there, and Galadriel's there, and Elrond's there, and Celeborn is there. He's not there in the book. All right, Galadriel leaves him. She is from Valinor. She was born there under the Light of the 2 Trees. And she was forbidden from going back because of the kinslaying, but because she turned down the One Ring when it was offered to her by Frodo, her past sins basically have been forgiven, and now she can go back home if she wants to, and apparently she wants to. So she does go back to the west. But Celeborn was not born in Valinor. He was born in Middle Earth. And apparently he does not want to go to the West, even though his wife is going. And so he sort of, sadly, if you read the appendices, just sort of like patters around Middle Earth for a while. He sets himself up as king in what's in like East Lothlorien or something. But within a few decades, he's apparently moved to Rivendell, where he's hanging out with the sons of Elrond, with whatever few Elrond's people are still around, and we don't know what happens to him after that. But clearly, when he says, may your doom be other than mine, and your treasure stay with you to the end, he knows that his wife is going to leave him, and he's hoping that, at least with Aragorn, that his wife, Arwen, will stay with Aragorn to the end, which she does. So that's just like one of the saddest things that when I think of the books. And one of the things that's kind of played off as funny, but you have to read the appendices to really get it, I guess, and understand something about European languages. So, in many languages in Europe, there are formal ways of saying things and informal ways of saying them. So in German, if you're going to be formal, you might say, wie sind Sie? How are you? Right? But you wouldn't say, I don't know, wie bist du? To someone who's older than you, or to your parent, or to a teacher. You might to a child. But people use the formal with each other a lot, the informal not so much. Now, for whatever reason, English dropped all that, right? We used to have these thee and thous, which basically were the singular, the informal. So now if you're going to read them, you kind of look at the King James Bible if you're going to get all that kind of stuff. But English just dropped that. And so now you, which was the plural for the plural second person, is now plural and singular, although we usually think of it as being singular, in which case then people start inventing plurals like y'all and you guys and things like that. So we don't recognize that difference in English these days between a formal and an informal. So when our characters occasionally drop into the informal in Lord of the Rings, it seems kind of weird. At first they're just sort of chatting the way that we would all chat, and then someone turns to someone and says like thee and thou, and you're like, oh, where'd that come from? Well, it came from the fact that Tolkien wants to make the point that this person has now dropped into the informal speech with this other character. So when, like say, Eowyn does that with Aragorn, but he won't use it back to her, right? He wants to maintain a distance. He's engaged to Arwen now. Eowyn doesn't know this, it's none of her business, but he's not free to return her affections. And so, when she starts getting a crush on him and she starts dropping to the informal a couple times, he absolutely does not do it back to her, right? He is maintaining that distance of, I'm going to speak the formal version of this language with you. He doesn't drop it until she is betrothed to Faramir. So then she uses it with Aragorn, but at this point now it's more like they're friends. And then he uses it back to her. He says something like, pleases me to see thee now in bliss. So he then, for the first time, will use the informal with her, because now he's married, she's betrothed, they're friends, it's cool, right? They can do that. But the funny part, which you don't get unless you're thinking along these lines, is that when Pippin shows up in Minas Tirith, he doesn't know. So as far as the men of Gondor are concerned, the Shire's out in the sticks, they don't speak right out there. Now Gandalf and Aragorn, Elrond, they've been around hobbits enough that they know that the hobbits always use the informal with people and don't think a thing about it, because they've done the opposite of what English has done. They've kind of dropped the formal language and they've kept the informal mode of speech. So here's the hobbits going around Minas Tirith Pippin talking to people in the informal, to complete strangers, right? Even to Denethor, the steward of the city, he's using the informal. He doesn't know it's a social faux pas. So the people around him also don't know what's going on, because this is their steward, right? So if you're going to talk to him, you should be using the formal. If you're going to use the informal, it kind of implies that you're being, maybe a little patronizing or condescending. You're basically talking to someone else like they're a child, because that's the kind of people you would normally use the informal with, as people who are below you in station, people much younger than you, or maybe a master might use it with a servant, or a king with his knights or whatever. But you're not going to use it with someone who outranks you. That's bad form. Pippin has no idea. And clearly he has no idea. I mean, his whole manner is being respectful. It's just that the way he speaks is not respectful. So the people are kind of trying to figure out, who is this guy? And that's how they come up with it. He must be the prince of the halflings, because he's speaking even to our steward as if he were a child. And, surely, unless he's like, some really, really important person among the halflings, he wouldn't dare do that. So then you've got, Denethor knows what's going on, because he knows that the hobbits aren't going to speak what he considers correctly. So he makes a couple little snide remarks that Pippin doesn't get about how, oh, you think you outrank me or whatever, or you think you're a king or something. And Pippin is just kind of like, I don't know why you just said that to me, right? But the people around Denethor don't know what's going on. So then they start calling Pippin Prince of the Halflings. And it's kind of, if you get it, it seems a little funny. And if you don't get it, then you just sort of kind of think, okay, I don't know why the character just said that. But it is humorous if you know what's happening. So that's just kind of little fun things. I hope you found that kind of entertaining. If there are other things that appeal to you about Lord of the Rings, I hope that you will put something in the comments or contact me if you want to come onto this playlist. Let's have a chat about it. Perhaps we'll disagree on something. Who knows? And learn a little bit more about Lord of the Rings along the way, as we look forward to Amazon Prime's new show that's coming up sometime. They haven't announced yet. So we'll see you next time. Please hit the like and subscribe and share this video around, and that all helps me a lot. See you next time. Bye-bye.